This is how it looks when mounted on a Sony A1 body along with the lens hood attached. The entire combo is so light and so convenient to handhold and carry for the entire day without any sort of support. I don't really feel the need to use any monopod or tripod or any sort of such support. It is so light and handy. Hello everyone, welcome to another video from our channel. I am Vinod GS from VHS Studios. Today we are going to talk about an amazing offering from Sigma, which is a 500mm 5.6 prime lens, and the official name goes like this: 500mm 5.6 DGTN OS sports lens. The mentioned lens is launched in two mount options. One is actually L mount and the next is the E mount, which is Sony, and the lens we got for testing is the E mount lens. Let's go through some of the images taken with this lens mounted on Sony A1. We are using a fast RAW viewer, which is a good RAW viewer for Mac. The aspects we would be checking here are sharpness, bokeh, and we also check whether there is any ghosting or flares, and overall image quality. This image is taken on a foggy morning, but still the overall rendering seems to be pretty nice. The depth of field rendering also seems to be pretty nice. As we can see, the sharpness is quite nice. There is no post-processing applied on these images, not even lens correction, because the lens correction profile is not available with us at the moment. This could be a good example to see the resolving power of this lens, or in other words, the sharpness of this lens. Here you can clearly see details of the individual strands of the feather. Here is another image wherein you can clearly see the feather details. Here is another image wherein you can clearly see the hair-like structure on this plant. Seems to be pretty sharp. Let us see some of the bokeh in this image. This is actually the reflection from the bottle body, so the shape of the bokeh could be a bit deceiving, but there is no onion rings or any other patterns found in this bokeh. It seems to be pretty clean. Here we could see some burned highlights in this image, but there is no ghosting or flares in this one. This could be because of the fact that there are no diffractive elements used in this lens. In this image we can see how rich and beautiful the color rendering of this lens. In general, it renders beautiful colors and details. Here you can see so much of details are there in the face of this bird. Here is another image of a peacock, wherein you can clearly see how rich and beautiful the color rendering of this lens is. Overall, the image quality of this lens is much higher than what we would expect from that price range, and we are quite pleased to say that it's an awesome lens. So the dimension goes like this. It has a length of 206.6 millimeter. And a diameter of 106.6 millimeter. The weight is slightly different for L mount and E mount, and E mount weighs around 1365 grams. Despite of these numbers and figures, it would be easier to understand if we have it compared to a non-object. So let's do that. As you all know, this is a 1.5 liter water bottle, and let's see how big or small the lens is. And this is how it looks when placed side by side to a 1.5 liter water bottle. Please be noted that this is with the hood. So if I remove this hood, it is even smaller than the bottle. Let's do some other comparison. This is how it looks against a 70-200 2.8 lens from Sigma itself. This is actually a 70-200 2.8 EF mount lens. It is slightly longer, that's it. Actually, it is even lighter than the 70-200, which is amazing. So let's do one more comparison. So this time we will put Sony 200-600, which is a pretty common lens among Sony users. And this is how small the 500 5.6 when placed side by side with the 200-600. Normally the sports and art lenses are mostly made of solid metal. But in this case, maybe because of the intention of reducing the weight, they have actually made a major chunk of this lens with a thermally stable composite material, which is not metal but can perform even better than metal when there is no much of temperature variations. So that is the main reason for the reduction in the weight, and actually they have redesigned the optics of this lens for the mirrorless bodies. That is also one of the reason why this lens is so compact. Since it is a wildlife lens, the weather sealing of the lens do matter. Sigma assures that they have used the same level of dust and splash resistance what they normally use in their sports lineup in this lens. It is also worth noting that the front element of this lens is having a oil and water resistant coating. When we come to the rear end of this lens, it has got a rubber sealing which actually stops the elements from getting into the body through the mount. In this particular lens, they have used a highly responsive linear actuator autofocusing system, which in our usage seems to be pretty quiet, pretty accurate, and pretty fast. It effortlessly focused and tracked the subject in a silent mode. Here we can see a sequence of actions wherein the camera and lens combo effortlessly track the subject. And here is another image from that sequence wherein the rendering of image seems to be pretty nice. Normally when we use a third-party lens, especially on a Sony body, one of the concern is that some or few of the autofocus options or features are restricted in some cases. But in this case, all the autofocusing features are working as if it were an OEM lens. So we didn't see any real shortcomings in that aspect. The 5.6 uses Sigma's OS2 algorithm for the optical stabilization. And as per the test result, it offers around 5 stops of image stabilization. And in the practical sense, we get to see that it performs on par of what they were claiming. Let's talk about the optics of this lens. It is also worth noting that whatever prime lenses we have seen in such a small form factor normally uses diffractive elements to obtain that reduction in size. But in this case, Sigma has not used any diffractive elements in this lens, which is pretty amazing. It has got 20 elements in 14 groups, which includes 3 FLD elements and 2 SLD elements. And like I mentioned, no diffractive elements has been used in this lens, and the new and improved optical design enabled Sigma to create this lens in such a small form factor. The aperture system has got 11 blades and it gave us beautiful bokeh. When we talk about the minimum focusing distance of this lens, that comes at 3.2 meters, and it takes filters with the size of 95 millimeter. It is worth noting that 1.4 and 2 times teleconverters are available for this lens, but not for this particular E-mount lens. Those are available only for L-mount for the time being. And there is a dock also available, which is also right now available only for the L-mount lens, not for the E-mount. So these things are worth noting. This lens comes with a removable lens hood, which is actually Arca-Swiss compatible, so that you don't have to really mount an additional plate to mount it on an Arca-Swiss system. Though the lens is so light, they have even given us an option to remove even the foot, which seems unnecessary because of how light the lens is. But anyways, the option is there. You can actually rotate this lens. It has a click and a notch feel at every 90 degrees, switching from horizontal to vertical or vice versa. There is a manual focusing ring, and there is one more ring which actually can control the aperture. There are a few options in relation with the aperture ring. You can either put it on manual and change it manually from the lens, or you can put it in auto and you can change the aperture from your camera. So in relation to this ring, there is actually 2 switches. One is actually a lock switch, so that you can either put it in auto and lock it over there so that you don't accidentally change the settings, or if you want to intentionally put it in manual so that you can change it from the lens, then it locks from moving into auto mode. Until and unless you remove the lock, you cannot change the status of this ring. When we go to the other side of this lens, there is actually one click on and off. So if you keep it off, the manual changes are actually seamless. So there is no click sound, there is no feedback, nothing is there, which can be helpful when taking video, but not so in photography. User has the option to enable the click feedback. Once you enable the click feedback, then in manual mode, it creates a sound and it gives a notch feel so that user will get the feedback that he is changing the settings. Let's talk about the switches which comes in this lens. On top we have the autofocus manual focus selector, and below that we have got the autofocus limiter, which actually limits the range of the autofocusing planes. Either you can put it on full option, which can focus from the minimum focusing distance to the infinity, and the second option is that you can put it between 3.2 meters, which is actually the minimum focusing distance, to 10 meters. So lens will not focus beyond that. And in the last option, you can put it from 10 meters to infinity, so it won't focus closer to 10 meters. Next comes the optical stabilization selection button, which has an option to put it on off, and there is two more options as well, which has a different optical stabilization settings. And last but not least, it has got a custom option selection button as well. The lens do have a custom buttons, and we can assign certain custom functions on these buttons from the camera itself. 3 buttons has been given so that it would be easier for the user to use it regardless of the orientation he or she is shooting at. At the time of shooting this video, this lens is priced at approximately $3,000 US. $3,000 is not a small amount, we do agree, but in the ballpark of telephoto primes, this is a much affordable option, which is actually a smart move from Sigma. The OEM primes like 400 2.8 and 600 f4 cost almost 4 to 5 times higher than this particular lens, and the price of this lens is on the same ballpark like many of the premium zooms as well. This lens could be an ideal choice for someone who is looking for their first prime lens. Those who are already having a primary set of gears, this can complement that as a second option. We have been using Sigma lenses even from our DSLR days. We have owned and used many of the contemporary art and sport lenses. We were pretty much amazed and really impressed with the build quality as well as the optical performance of these lenses. And the same thing we can see in this lens as well. Following are our thoughts about this lens after using it for a few days. Like mentioned earlier, this can be an ideal choice for someone who is planning to step into the world of primes. Even though you will be losing 100 mm of focal length and one stop of light when compared to a 600 f4, this lens is priced much cheaper than the OEM version. Regarding the focal length, we cannot do much because there is no teleconverter support at this moment for this lens. But when it comes to the lowest one stop of light, with the highly capable low light sensors these days and the noise reduction softwares, you can really manage that. It is also worth noting that there would be a difference in the depth of field as well. But when you tally this against the price, size and form factor of this lens, it's one of the best value for money options out there. This lens can be very helpful when you want to travel light. We were really impressed with the size, weight and the optical performance of this lens. This lens renders beautiful colors, amazing bokeh and great details. It renders amazing image quality, much better than what we would expect from that price range. When we compare it with the 600 and 400 primes, the areas where we would benefit is the price, the form factor and the weight. If our videos are bringing any value addition to the table, please consider liking and sharing the video, and also consider subscribing to the channel and enabling the bell button so that you don't miss out any future videos. If you have got any comments or concerns, you can write to us in the comment box and we would be happy to reply on all of your comments. Until we meet in the next video, thank you and goodbye.